Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Let's hop in. Um, as far as the accountability section for today, I've been trying to do this Duelist Cup to try and get into the second stage before the second stage started, and it does definitely feel like there's just more of a challenge to get from 17 to 20 than frankly to get from 1 to 17. It's easier to fall back down a little bit if you lose, and since I was not paying attention probably as much as I should have, I probably did. I know I fell down at least one rank. And I'm not sure I ever even recovered from that. We are now back up to the maximum amount of dual slots also. And as far as things I've been doing, that's been about it. I spent a lot of time yesterday on a side project, still trying to figure out why my front door unlocks for me and doesn't unlock for somebody else, and I think it's literally come down to the fact that the other person is putting the same phone, because I took that phone outside of the range and inside the range, and it unlocked and worked perfectly yesterday. Today it didn't work, and I think it has come down to the fact that that other person is putting it in the outside pocket of an insulated lunchbox that just has kind of that aluminum foil polyester on the inside for insulation. I suspect that might be actually interfering with the signal. Like that's the Bluetooth signal. That's the only thing I can think of. I'm trying to eliminate every single possible factor, and it's really come down to insulated lunchbox being a Faraday cage, which is not something I would have even thought of, frankly. But yeah, I didn't get back to playing Reigns for Majesty, and I didn't get back to doing anything else. So you can see, like, the highest level here I made it to is 18 so far, and I'm at 17 now. And so I just need to really pay attention and try and get 6 wins in a row, I believe, is what I need. Doesn't really have to be in a row, but 6 wins in a row is ideally what you would want to get to that second stage, to that max level. And then if it's that much of a struggle just to get to level 20, it is questionable how far further down the path as far as the next actual tournament I would get. Yeah, let's go ahead and cancel that. Yeah, when I'm not really paying attention and just playing, like, I don't really read the cards as far as what I'm canceling and fully consider my actions, and so that's another thing. There's a slick deal sale I'll mention right now for Raspberry Pi Flirc cases, F-L-I-R-C, I believe. It might just be Fleur, F-L-I-R, which are probably the best cases for passive cooling that exist. So you'll save. They're on sale for like $10 when they're usually $13 or $14. I need to buy a couple of them, but frankly, I have blown the budget with my countertop oven needing to be replaced because it was broken, with the door lock costing twice as much as I initially wanted. The heat has certainly raised bills as far as electricity for cooling and water bills for just slightly more frequent watering of grass and using water to bathe. Plus Amazon Prime Day certainly actively designed to get in the way and have people spend a bunch of money on things that they wouldn't have thought of right before a bunch of other expenses happen. Also, at the end of the month, I need to upgrade, renew my annual cell phone bills, which will be really expensive, and because I like pay a full 12 months in advance prepaid with Mint Mobile. Also, I need to renew a license with the Tableau over-the-air DVR thing, which I'm pot committed into that. Like the Tableau, a year now later, has not gotten as much use as I would have liked or hoped. Particularly, also now a year later, there's considerably less on TV and over the air. There's been just a massive amount of things that have been also canceled on TV, particularly because of the AT&T WB merger. So that there's even less shows this year than there were last year, than there were the year before. It's just constantly getting worse and worse. Even less shows coming up over the air anyways, because more and more things are moving towards streaming services or Hulu. I've probably been late to the party to realize just how useful Hulu can be, but also Hulu has highlighted that same problem where there isn't a lot of shows that don't just get canceled. So there's a lot of TNT, TBS, CBS shows that I've seen on Hulu that are just straight up canceled and don't have an ending to them, unlike Netflix, which has been pretty good about at least ending things on a season, so there's a somewhat of a wrap up there. Where a lot of shows just get canceled after 2 or 3 episodes. There was this show called People of Earth that Hulu suggested to me, where it was like a support group of people who were abducted by aliens. It was a comedy actually made by Conan O'Brien's production company, which I would have to assume his production company probably doesn't have any success other than Conan O'Brien behind it. What is it called? Team Conoco or something? But also Conan O'Brien, whether he deserves it or not, because I kind of think he's a jerk secretly in the background, but aren't they all? He really got screwed out of a lot of success, and never really recovered from that. I don't even know if he's on TV anymore. But yeah, People of Earth just ends. It just ends on a cliffhanger at the end of a season. It's not worth watching because it doesn't resolve anything. So yeah, as far as how that connects to the Tableau is, well, the over-the-air Tableau gets a lot of weird local channels. It'll have a lot of weird old stuff. So if you want to watch things like I Love Lucy or Mary Tyler Moore, you're really set there. If you want to watch old westerns, it's really for old people, obviously. And then if you want like local news, you get that. But if you want a better no commercial experience, Hulu will suit you better and give you that Netflix experience, and have slightly newer shows, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's not that much difference. then Netflix will give you a slightly more polished experience for its Netflix originals and the shows that Netflix tends to add to their service tends to be slightly higher quality. But all of them come with their problems and cancellations. A weird experiment. Lots of people have canceled Netflix in particular, and they're just tired of it. They're tired of what it's offering. I think Netflix offers things that appeal to me, and this is inherently the problem, is that if you're trying to appeal to a person who wants to see more niche audience or niche art type shows, you're not going to appeal to the general masses, and they probably need some more salt of the earth, just standard sitcoms, not rom-coms. Really, they should be coming out with 2 or 3 sitcoms every time they release new shows, and they should just be standard, slightly conservative things that would appeal to conservatives to the right a lot more, instead of super woke gay spy cartoon that they canceled that too. And I actually kind of like that group of gay spies cartoon. If anything, I thought that was probably lampooning and making fun of the wokeness by being hyper woke, particularly in the cartoon form. That's the way it felt. I guess I can't do anything. He's got something here. Special summon monsters. Yeah, I can't special summon monsters. So I can't special summon this. Can't special summon that. Can't special summon that. Oh, I'm screwed. I don't know how to win now. He's just gonna make it so this turns into a straight up normal versus normal battle. I still would heavily lean towards Netflix. Maybe it needs new management and new decisions on what it makes, but Netflix, I think, is still set itself up to be a slightly more successful than any of the other streaming services, even including Disney Plus, because when you have one company, even like Disney, that owns everything and just streaming their own service, that leaves a different taste in the mouth of a lot of people. Oops, I forgot it was my turn. Then Netflix, which was gonna try and get different content from different places. Disney Plus is not going to reach out to Korean shows and Korean production companies and say, let's bring out your Korean comedy onto our service. Disney Plus is not going to go and reach towards a Bandai or Funicom or something and say, let's get some of your anime on our service. So Disney Plus is over time going to show itself as being very stagnant with only a few new shows. It's going to feel a lot better than, say, Apple TV, which basically has only 5 shows. 5 originals and nothing else really to show at all. Or even Hulu, which basically has maybe 10 or 12 originals. Hulu also is shrinking, unfortunately, which a merger should happen. The smartest thing would be for Hulu and Netflix to find a way to merge. I guess I don't really have much to say, though, so what I guess the experiment for today will be is to try and cover news while also trying to pay fairly good attention to playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And actually make it all the way through Yu-Gi-Oh! Towards the end of the stream, instead of doing what I've been doing lately, which is stopping after 2 hours and just burning through the remainder of the news. try to better integrate the two back and forth, which I haven't found a great way to do that. There's something else I wanted to mention, though, and now it slipped my mind. Well, not gonna remember it. So we'll go through the video games Chronicles articles. Overwatch account merging has been detailed ahead of the cross-progression launch. A cancelled Iron Man studio from the studio behind Just Cause has been revealed. This is kind of older stuff. I don't know why we have run into a case where I'm starting to get these repeated stories, or 2 or 3 repeated stories, but that's fine. Embracer Group has made more acquisitions, including The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings IP. The new deal includes limited run games, Tuxedo Labs, Tripwire Interactive, and an undisclosed company. So this happened right after the stream on Wednesday, just like a couple hours after the fact. Oh, so he destroyed the you can't special summon spell for him, and or the trap that said you can't special summon. And yeah, Embracer Group, THQ Nordic, as it used to be known as now, potentially jumping the shark as they acquire Maneater's company. Like, yeah, I can't help but feel like this is going to be bad for them in the long run, because they're going to just have 5-6 more companies that are all developing something and all costing them money. Well, they still don't really have any games that are coming out and succeeding very well. Remember, THQ Nordic started with the hopes that they would get the Darksiders series back on track and finished as a game, and just finish that narrative that was promised probably 15 years ago at this point with the first game. And they really haven't done that. They came out with a side game, and then they came out with Darksiders 3, which played very differently and wasn't received particularly well and hasn't gained any fandom. So they failed on that big ticket AAA game with THQ Nordic, as it originally was, and they've really not done anything else or released anything else to make you feel like that the management at the Embracer Group at THQ Nordic has any interest whatsoever in actually delivering a product. And this is all pre-pandemic activity too. It's not like you can just say, oh well, COVID slowed this down and that's the reason why we don't have any games to show. Like, they have just been so hyper focused on acquiring people. It almost feels like a conspiracy to just have as many programmers work together so that they can secretly work on some kind of top secret government project instead. Which, honestly, if you were the CIA or the NSA or something, that probably isn't a terrible thought, as far as let's have the let's hire a bunch of programmers in video game companies to work on something that is very much not a video game instead, and conceal our true motives. Okay, what card do I want to send to the graveyard then? And let's go ahead and return this card, I guess. But I honestly don't suspect that it is actually a government conspiracy of any sorts. I suspect it is much more likely that what is going on here is simply a case of the original THQ wanting the the original THQ failing miserably and then having to go bankrupt and split up, and then the same people trying to rebuild their former glory and just rebuild THQ and overcommit, which is, yeah, it gets harder to hope even that Embracer Group isn't just going to become too big to sustain itself. And will just end up making a bad call and having not enough reserve cash to cover that bad call. But that is really just my opinion. The facts are that Middle-earth Enterprises, which owns the IP rights to the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit, so it's a holding company for, I assume, the video game rights to those. Probably not the same company that owns the movie or TV rights, and I assume they are still under some moderately tight controls of the Tolkien estate. Limited Run Games, which had set itself up to be a the place where you would get physical versions of single A games, independent games, sometimes double A games. A triple A game would not be published as a publishing company by Limited Run Games, for sure. But there is, I think, maybe a possibility that Limited Run Games is also the one that sometimes publishes more of the niche, lewd Japanese games, but you're talking Senran Kagura and things like that. You're not talking absolute, like, absolute adult games. Limited Run Games, to my knowledge, never actually published a full adult game. And Limited Run selling itself on the idea that it's going to publish limited runs of things, charged a higher premium than they probably should have for a lot of games, and made a lot of these limited edition game extra things, physical things that I don't know if those things really need to exist at all. They also acquired Tuxedo Labs, a Swedish studio specializing in tech-driven games. The first title was Tanner. I think Embracer Group is kind of in Sweden, or at least it's in Europe. And I think in a lot of ways there is just this heavy push, probably by Sweden, to help Limited Embracer Group become a powerhouse in video games. Tuxedo Labs made a title named Teardown, don't recognize it. Tripwire Interactive is a US studio that made Maneater, Killing Floor, and Rising Storm, which all of those are games that sold, but they kind of struggled. Sing Tricks, which is a vocalizing processing effect technology for karaoke gaming equipment, so some kind of singing game, you assume. They did acquire their first Japanese company in Tatsujin, which was founded by the shoot-'em-up studio Topolin's co-founder. Bitwave Games, a Swedish studio with a passion for retro gaming, and Geotech gaming accessory brand, and then another company within the PC console gaming that for commercial reasons is not disclosed today. Commercial reasons, what does that mean particularly? That can mean anything. So yeah, that's a long list, and at this point Embracer Group is the Tencent of Sweden, and for better or worse, we have to kind of look at it from that perspective. Although Sweden, to my knowledge, doesn't have any major censorship laws or restrictions, so if Embracer Group acquired Tencent tomorrow, and then Tencent had like no business practices or no control whatsoever in China, which that's impossible. China would never let that happen. But if that magically did happen, then there would be considerably less concern around Embracer Group owning a bunch of companies, as much as there is concern around Tencent owning parts of companies. Like, I don't even know, so I can't even imagine what a Swedish-based propaganda campaign would look like or would be, really. If Sweden, the government of Sweden, used Embracer Group to try to influence people, or influence politics or things like that, I don't know particularly what they would even try to push, really. Just maybe more European individual rights, which honestly I wouldn't disagree with. But it's just so far from something that we even have to worry about that it would be hard to imagine. Yeah. I imagine Sweden probably does have some nastiness in its closet, like every country does, but you'd have to either live there or be a historian of the area to know what it was. As a United Statesian, we're definitely not educated towards the events of other countries at all. I got a lot of cards here I'm gonna have to play on this turn. Do this. Activate this. Wait for this guy to decide to do something. The Dead Island 2 leaks on Amazon have screen details and possible release date. You can see improved graphics from like Dead Island 1, obviously, but it's been like 10 years, so obviously the graphics should be improved. This is the trailer for Dead Island 2 that was released many years ago and probably has very little connection to what is actually going to be on the disc. They were thinking the Dead Island 2 had been previously suggested by Embracer Group to be released by the current fiscal year, which ends March 31st, 2023. Dead Island 2, since it is an Embracer Group game also, may be the game that just fails. That is a possibility. It may be the big failure that causes problems for Embracer Group. But also, I don't know. Like, it kind of feels like Embracer Group almost has a infinite amount of money. Let's see. Embracer also confirms a studio switch for a AAA project following claims that the Knights of the Old Republic was in trouble. It was recently claimed Saber Interactive could have taken over the game from Asper, which I guess they've confirmed that somebody took over. Maybe not Saber Interactive. It's frankly shocking that we haven't had any of the companies that Embracer Group has acquired lay off some people so far, because that's really what you would probably need to do to be successful, is that you've acquired a bunch of companies. Not all of the employees in every single company were excellent employees and good at their job. Like, it could be a case that a lot of the companies that Embracer Group has acquired were actively working with each other or working within the same circles anyways. So it might be that a lot of these companies were doing support work for the same project, so almost everybody that Embracer Group owns now were working with each other anyways. And so logically it may have made some sense that they just become one company. But I just don't really believe that video game development worked that way. You didn't have 10 companies working on the same game. I've seen credits where games have 4 or 5 different companies working on different parts, but 10 is pretty high, and that it would have to be somewhere around 10 companies working on each game multiple times for the concept of just merging everything together to start to make sense. Moving on with Video Games Chronicle news, Nintendo reportedly plans to boost its Switch supply by shrinking its packaging. Reducing the size of the product boxes will enable the company to ship more units. This is basic shipping 101, as it is that the smaller the packaging, the more you can get on a pallet, the more pallets you can, the same number of pallets end up in a shipping container, and then the shipping containers stay the same size and are very standardized, or mostly standardized, as far as going on ships and being brought across the ocean. Now the opposite problem with that is you would have made your packaging as small as you could anyways. The only time you really have a desire to make your packaging bigger is if you're making something like a micro SD card or something that is so incredibly small that shoplifting would be a problem, or actual visibility of the packaging might be a problem. But for something as big as the Nintendo Switch, which will also be behind glass and a locked case anyways in a store, that's never going to be a problem. So they would have made the packaging as small as they could while ensuring that units don't get damaged in shipping. That most electronics in particular have a origami box to hold the most delicate pieces inside of the outer box, and there is not really a lot of extra room to remove. You could stop using like recyclable cardboard and then get yelled at if you were started to use like styrofoam or something that was oil based, rubber, things like that. And the increased cost of making a box like that would probably not make it worth it. So I mean, if the same thing is going to be in the box always, that seems like that's a problem. One thing they could do, certainly, though, is they could have not included the Joy-Cons or the controller in the box, and this would certainly be dangerous. And then they could have one box that is just a Nintendo Switch with no Joy-Cons, which is probably stupid, or with just Joy-Cons but not the handle grip, and then have a separate box that's smaller for the handle grip, because you can reduce maybe 10% of this box and then 10% of another box and get 20%, whereas if you just reduced all of this together you might only get 10-15%. But that's about all you could do, really, is that if everything was in its own separate packaging. But then that runs the risk of people getting scammed and ending up with less than what Nintendo wants them to have. There is a kind of mushroom type mycelium based packing technology that they're working on, but I don't think they've gotten that into full production, and I don't think that would inherently take up less space. So yeah, in a lot of ways this feels like Nintendo is just grasping at straws, that they're going to try and reduce it by 20% beginning in August. And so it'd be very interesting, because you don't get these kinds of examples that often. It'd be very interesting to see what an original package and how it's packed and how much space it takes is compared to the smaller package, for like a YouTuber to do that. There hasn't been any major amount of complaints of damaged switches in shipping, so they may have just overprotected the device, and maybe now they're more happy to increase the odds of something breaking in shipping. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says the Pokemon Center London queues are significantly better on Thursday. Do they have a picture of that? Apparently, no. This was the queues on, or the lines on Wednesday, which I went into a long rant about how there's, just from this picture, some obvious mismanagement on that. They waited up to 5 hours sometimes, apparently. But I'd really like to see how they would have improved it. But also, I guess this is Video Games Chronicle being a London-based or a UK-based website, really trying to have their own little exclusive story here, talking about the wait lines at Disney, effectively. Which really isn't news for the vast majority of people. People not in the UK, people not going to the Pokemon Center in London. It would have to be more of a national story where there was just massive wait times at every Pokemon Center that exists before it would really rise to the level of being important. think I screwed up here. Alright, well. I should have played this first, so I had more cards. Well. I may once again be in a situation where I can't special summon anything. Says you cannot special summon monsters except for link monsters. So I think the straight up trick here is I'm just gonna have to do this. Destroy that. Come over here. Now be able to special summon monsters. We want to move as fast as possible because this is taking way too long. I guess inherently, if you were able to script some macros, some actions while playing Yu-Gi-Oh, which would be helpful, it would also allow a lot of slow players to continue to be slow players and not get timed out. But I would definitely accept that trade-off. There we go. Let's see. The next free Epic Games Store title has been confirmed. Ring of Pain will replace Doom 64 and Rumbleverse Boombox Content Pack. Ring of Pain, not a game I recognize. Do we have a video here that can give me a general idea of what it is? I kind of feel like it's a top-down hack and slash game, possibly player versus player. But yeah, I have no idea. Right. Can we win this turn? Probably not, but we'll see. What's stupid here, though, also, is that this is just getting me back to level 18 with this victory. I still need to get like 2 more victories in a row to get to 19, and 2 more victories in a row to get to 20. And so that inherently is going to potentially push me towards playing more off screen and doing less. Yeah, wasn't that supposed to raise my duels level? I may be trapped here. Maybe I misunderstood this. Yeah. No, I can still get to level 20. You didn't have to get to level 20 before the second stage started. Yeah, I just need to win this game. Video Games Chronicles has a paid for sponsorship here. Super People, why 4 million players are flocking to Korea's hottest battle royale. This is just straight up an advertisement hidden as an article. Final Fantasy 16 producer says he knows its combat won't satisfy everyone. So this is basically the second time somebody who has worked on Final Fantasy 16 has said we couldn't have had open world because that would have been crazy the first time. Now they're saying the combat won't satisfy everyone. It definitely seems like whoever's doing the spin and the PR here is doing a terrible job, because it is definitely coming off like a bunch of excuses and definitely not anywhere as much hype as you'd normally have for any game, particularly a Final Fantasy game. He's probably feels like they're pre-warning players to say, actually, we know this is going to be a garbage Final Fantasy, so you can skip this one. Spider-Man's PC first patch fixes ray tracing crashes and stability issues. Yeah, if I had extra money, getting Spider-Man on PC would be a great idea to really push my video card just to make sure everything is fine. I haven't done enough on my computer in the past couple of months to be 100% certain, but I have not had any random breaks or problems in significant amounts. There was a point where the graphics card did crash playing an old game, and I'm willing to blame the old game because it never happened again even on that old game. But yeah, really pushing it and playing something that's pushing the ray tracing would be a nice stress test. Gameplay footage of Sega's Hyenas is leaked, which is, I guess, something. Diablo 4 devs have reiterated that the game won't be pay to win. We'll just have to wait and see. They're saying the right thing at least, but it's potentially going to fall on deaf ears. Yeah, and unfortunately, I need to go to the bathroom, and this is the game I needed to win at. Oh. So I need to find a way to overpower this guy really, really quick. Then I'm gonna have to pause the video, and it will be a long 20-minute break, and then we'll come back. The thing I forgot about was I was gonna say my YouTube short today has already gotten like 500 views, so it is all over the place, but it's a problem. Okay, well, this isn't gonna work, so I'm gonna pause the video here, and this game will just continue, and I'll probably concede. It'll probably time out, so I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back, and that's a great example of why I could never be a professional gamer. Having to run out in the middle of a game, in a middle of a very important duel, if you're trying to actually win a tournament, just having to run to the bathroom. And yeah, it doesn't just affect gaming. Certainly IBS affects all forms of trying to do anything. Just having to put life on pause for frequent, undelayable, urgent bathroom calls. But whatever, we'll continue down that path. As far as now, we need to probably win 2 more victories to try and go up 1 more rank. So yeah, between being distracted and losing and surrendering when I don't play fast enough, and just running to the bathroom, it's no surprise I don't get anywhere higher as far as these ranked games, and it's no surprise why I tend not to play. I tend not to play with multiplayer games or anything that is of any real challenge, is because I'm just not physically capable to put in that time and energy. That being said, having IBS obviously does not compare to being completely paralyzed or missing an arm or leg or anything like that. It is definitely on the far other side of a spectrum of I suppose you'd call it disabilities. I don't even know if you really call it that, though. Inconveniences, disorders might be a more palatable term. Of course, it is also the case that even people that are missing legs and arms often don't want to be thought of as being disabled. So there is a tendency for people to all think that they're way more able-bodied than they are. But as someone who has IBS, and I'm not going to get into a big rant here, it's always a little shocking when you see jobs that are straight up treating their employees like kids and making them take 15-minute breaks every 4 hours at very specific times, like that's realistic at all, and just counting every second that somebody is logged into a computer. And, like, there's a saying I heard that if you're having to document what you did every 15 minutes, then you're spending 15 minutes documenting what you did every 15 minutes. And someone is literally just wasting your time to irritate you or to create grounds to fire you. And once you realize a job is just trying to create traps to find an excuse to fire you, you're past the point of having a non-hostile work environment. Like, at a certain point, if I was the boss of a company, yeah, there would be some employees that try to take full naps for 4 hours a day in bathroom stalls. Like, there probably is going to be, out of 100 employees, one or two that try to do that. But honestly, if they're getting the work done, then it kind of doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to micromanage people to say, hey, here's a position I've created, and it's very obvious when the work that this position is supposed to accomplish gets accomplished. If I've created a position where it's not obvious that they're working, then I shouldn't have created the position in the first place as a manager. Managers really don't need to micromanage, and it's better, frankly, to have a lazy manager who is the person that's going and taking 4-hour naps in a bathroom stall every day than it is to have a micromanaging manager that is getting on everyone's case and ruining morale because he's trying to justify his own job and look like he's busy. So, in a lot of ways, as stupid as it may sound, be thankful if you have a boss that is just a lazy, that is a lazy pile of fat, I suppose is the phrase I was going to use. Just a lazy slob that's not doing anything at all. Because if he's not doing anything, then he's not doing anything bad. And frankly, middle managers, tend to be doing more bad than good. I definitely at one job had one boss who was lazy and just didn't do anything, and that boss was great. And then I got a boss who was super micromanaging, and that boss was awful. Because I never had any trouble with the boss that was lazy. Alright, but let's move on back to video game news instead of just generic rambling. Arcane, according to Video Games Chronicles, has released a 20-minute Redfall deep dive video. I tend to not like the idea of over promoting and over talking about a game, but I would say specifically in the case for Redfall, they have failed to really explain themselves quite well. This I think is supposed to be kind of like a Left 4 Dead with vampires. I know there's vampires in it, but I'm not 100% sure that it is actually a Left 4 Dead type game, or if it's more of a single player type experience. And everything they've done is kind of fallen flat, and I think a lot of that probably has to do with just there is a general vampire fatigue that is always in place for like probably after Twilight would have been about the point I would suspect that a general vampire fatigue set in. Even though there wasn't a ton of vampire movies, there's kind of consistently always one or two vampire movies out there. Enough to, I think, maintain that fatigue. The general feel that vampire stories exist, I think, is part of the issue there also. Because you see those kinds of stories repeated. Let's see if this would give me what I want. No, it won't. Well, we'll then summon this, activate this. Like, hopefully, the case would be that Redfall really does something different and surprises us. And they're just being kind of bad about advertising it. Even this 20-minute deep dive is very much like a Japanese 20-minute deep dive, where it's mostly people sitting around talking to each other with an occasional video section being integrated to show you what they're talking about. Gonna have this guy draw all the cards possible to either determine whether or not it doesn't matter whether he draws all the cards, or whether it will just have him win quicker. There is also, I think, a problem that might appear. Which one? I think that's what I want to pick. Where Redfall may get released too close to Dead Island 2, to Dying Light 2, which has already come out, and that we may just have too many Universal Studios monster games in a row as far as vampires and zombies. It very possibly is a case that they would like to get Redfall out for the Halloween season. And I don't know how much actual competition will be out there this October. And I keep forgetting that Redfall also has like this magical transporting through a different dimension aspect to it, that they've talked about that a couple times, and still it hasn't really stuck in my head. Right. Last chance here. I should have probably taken that, but whatever. There we go. And so we'll do 31 attack here. He'll have a ton of cards, some of which you will potentially have to discard unless you can play a bunch. And so this just forces the hand to see, can he counter what I've done now? Or am I going to win this next turn or in a couple turns? If he can't counter, he should probably just surrender at this point. But he can't surrender because then he won't get the rewards. Maybe I should have countered his ability with that one. Of course, the better way to play was once he had played Maxi to just end the turn at that point and not pushed it any further. That would have been the smarter move. Video Games Chronicle says the final Call of Duty Vanguard and Warzone season launches next week, if you're interested in that. Sonic Frontiers release date and DLC listed by promo material. So what is the release date? They're saying November 15th. Running out of time. Which, okay, you know. Then they are going to release Sonic Frontiers, they've said on time that they're not going to delay it and try to improve it, so Sega is at least going forward on the premise that they think it's a good game. And hopefully we'll be shocked to find it is actually a good game. But so far as what I've seen, I'm not leaning towards believing that. Alright, this might screw us over. This is a strategy I haven't seen before either. So it's always nice to see something new. Let's see, GameStop is selling PS5 consoles on Friday for Pro members and on Saturday for everyone. So we still having odd shortages and exclusive sales for the PlayStation 5. Death Stranding is officially coming to the Xbox Game Pass for PC, which it was rumored a couple days ago. Now it's official, whatever. The latest official Last of Us footage comparison compares the Boston docks on the PlayStation 4 versus PlayStation 5, which is like an 11-second video. More and more when you have these like remaster comparisons, it is more just like, okay, we have figured out with the new technologies how to add different shaders and different shadowing and make it look different. But I'm not sure, I'm 100% certain it looks better when if we go back here to the beginning of this, like it's kind of like, all right, we've made it less cartoony, and the scenes are completely different. The boats are in different places. There's less windows, and this building is totally different here. At the end of the day, I wouldn't be surprised if the docks... I'm about to lose. I don't even know how I got rid of my cards. So you really have to pay attention, and I'm not doing that. I guess if I really cared, I could save a replay. Where do you even save a replay? Down here? Yeah, save duel. I could save the duel if I cared. I don't know if games are particularly better if you have artists that are just rebuilding models of buildings and moving boats around and putting different shaders on it to make it less bright and colorful and more gritty and realistic. At a certain point, bright and colorful and gritty and realistic are just artistic styles that are effectively opinions and not objectively comparable to each other. Even something that is objectively comparable, saying that the remake has more polygons, for instance, doesn't really mean anything if all that means is that they added a floor and a lot more windows to a building in the distance. Does that significantly affect the gameplay or the narrative being told? This guy's probably playing my deck. Although he's got some different cards. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says Mega Drive and Genesis Mini 2 full game list confirmed, including unreleased title. Every game has been revealed for the Japanese and Western versions of the mini consoles. So here's the Western game list, which I'm just going to scroll down and not even read out loud, just to see if there's anything particularly interesting here. Like Vector Man 2. Some of these games, if they went to Steam, would have a lot more value than being re-released on these mini things. If they were just ported well, and this was like the first time you could play Echo the Dolphin CD on Steam, that would be interesting. Because like Night Trap is on Steam, for instance, and it's much more relevant as a PC gamer for me to know that than to try and connect a mini to some kind of capture device and capture the games on that aspect. And that's not just for YouTubers, people trying to make footage. It's also true for gamers. Like, how many gamers would want to go and play something like Sewer Shark if they have to plug in a mini? Whereas if it was just a easy download on Steam, I would love to play Sewer Shark again, because that was one that I played at a friend's house for a couple hours, and it was an interesting live action Sega CD game that almost certainly does not hold up. And then when you get to the Japanese game release, it does look like there's some differences, but I don't know if there's quite significant enough differences that you would want to potentially try to import the Japanese one. Again, if these were just all available on Steam for everybody, I think that would make more sense to me. Alright, let's do this. Let's see. I potentially should have activated the previous move. I don't know. I'm gonna intentionally try and summon this in attack positions to take that guy out. Which means this move, I shouldn't be able to activate anything. Well, I could activate that and bring that back. There's no reason to do that. Then this final move, I'm gonna hopefully be able to destroy that. Of course, the question, I guess, would come down to, why did I not just play this first? Well, whatever. I probably have won here. I suspect I've ruined his strategy well enough. He has only 3 cards. Unless he has some kind of major saving grace card here. It'd be hard to believe he could do too much. Of course, this Eldritch Golden Lord character, I think, always does have some weirdness around him. See, yeah, I don't quite understand what he thinks he's doing here. Like, maybe, just maybe, he's got some trick here that'll counter me destroying this card. Alright. I don't have enough to summon what I need to summon, so I think I just have to let him attack and destroy. I don't have enough spaces, is the problem. Okay. I don't know what this is actually going to do. Okay. Let's activate this. Discard this. Destroy this. Don't destroy another spell. Wait for this to activate. To then get this guy. Should have enough in the hand now. Activate this to special summon these. 1, 2, 3. See, I just want to win here, so I don't want to do anything too fancy. Trade off these two here. Activate this ability. Go ahead and activate that ability anyways. And that's banished that. That's 6,000. He's got nothing. Plus, we also have this where we could summon this and summon another one if necessary. But I don't think we need that. Let's just win. Unless he can throw something on the field. We're still at 17. Still really struggling here. We're not struggling to get wins, we're struggling to get enough wins. Is the problem. Let's see, Video Games Chronicle says the Sega Mega Drive Mini 2 has been confirmed for Europe, which obviously it was going to come out in Europe. I guess the question really was down to whether it was going to be called the Mega Drive or the Mini Drive. MPD says Multiversus was July's best-selling video game in the United States. Does it actually cost money to get into the beta effectively, Multiversus? Maybe it does. I haven't paid that much attention to it. And people really shouldn't pay that much attention to it. Like, I can't help but assume that Multiversus will start off real big, but over time, people will just turn back to either playing a more mature fighting game like Street Fighter game or Smash Brothers, which is just going to still have way more characters and way more interesting characters in the short run. Let's just activate this. Just cancel the very first action. Obviously, in playing Yu-Gi-Oh!, if you can do something that you really don't care if it gets canceled first, you should. Because that's where your counter cards are going to start to be played. Certainly is when they cancel something. Very few players are going to take the risk of holding back a cancel card, or just take the time to actually evaluate what the right move would be. And then our final Video Games Chronicle article here is Kena Bridge of Spirits is coming to Steam next month with a major update. There'll be a new game plus, enhanced photo mode, fresh outfits, and more being added to the game. I really wanted Kena Bridge of Spirits to be a lot more popular, but particularly since I think it is kind of a Pikmin type game, where you're controlling spirits. But I hate to say it, but it really does just feel like unless mainstream video game journalists get behind a game and talk about it for a month straight, games that are more kid-friendly or more niche just don't get into the general parlance of gamers' minds. The only game people were talking about around the time Kena came out was Elden Ring. The only game people are talking about on Reddit, at least, a lot is Elden Ring, which is a super hardcore type game. So the actual gaming community, if there is even a gaming community, seems to be more interested in talking about very hard games and no interest in more laid-back, simplistic games. Alright, so I got a victory there because he surrendered. I know that if I was going to get a victory here, I was going to go up a level. If I don't go up a level this time, then something is broken here, and I effectively should just give up. But that just gets me back to 18. So now I need to win, I think, 2 more victories, if not 3 more victories to get to 19, to get 100 gems, and then 2 or 3 more victories to get to 20 to get 300 gems. And at that point, I'm in the second stage, and who knows how much I'm really going to care about playing the second stage. Netflix did have this show that I barely paid any attention to, where they're trying to remodel a house in less than 24 hours, which is an insane idea. Effectively, how they did it on the first episode is that they had a house that was probably full of asbestos and far too small and far too old to be anything other than a tear down and rebuild, which I think that would have been a smarter way to make a TV show like that, to say, actually, we're just going to bulldoze your house, we're going to lay down new foundation, and then we're going to ship in a pre-built house from our secret factory facility that we've already designed and built and set everything up perfectly. But instead what they did is they built sections of the house, or big portions of the house, in their factory pre-built, so it's not really 24 hours. And then they're taking down walls and putting a pre-built section of wall, like an entire kitchen counter section, inside the frame and the bones of this very old house, and then they're just kind of repainting the, I assume, asbestos covered ceiling, popcorn, and walls, and just trying not to make any dust there and get away with things. Even the permits are questionable whether you'd get that in 24 hours if you're doing it right. If anything, the show is probably a lot like the Pimp My Ride show, where they pimped the cars, and most of those cars were absolutely undrivable and ruined and not street legal at the end of it. Yeah, it really, if you were going to do it right, you would make months worth of work look like weeks worth of work. You'd lie about how long it takes, or you would say everything gets installed in one day, but then it would be months, if not years, worth of building in a factory, effectively making a pre-built house to a good standard. And then you would just tear down, you bulldoze a house, the existing house, and replace it with something better. The other part, though, that was crazy about this show is that the first episode heavily implied that the house was being remodeled for this old lady who recently went blind. So she couldn't even see what they'd done, and I can't help but assume that that went down very poorly, or could have gone down very poorly. Because if you're blind and you have a house and you kind of have this decades-long mystery, because this is a very old lady, if you have this memory of knowing where everything is and you can't see, you would have your mental image of everything, where everything is, and you'd have some comfort in that and some stability in that. To come in and move furniture, repaint things, just make it look completely different, all of that would be so infuriating and off-putting. Like, Like, that is, even if the old lady definitely needed a new house, but you wouldn't want to change what was her house that she raised her kids in, effectively. And then Netflix is also going a little SJWE and in dangerous directions, because the first episode is an old lady who recently went blind, but also clearly says she was a social activist, but of a previous generation, and she's a white lady that has adopted a black daughter. I think it was the idea. And then the second episode is this homeschooling, I can't help but assume, quiverful, highly religious Christian family with like 6 kids, and several of them may have been adopted, or they may all be natural born. Which, man, every single time TV has ever shown a bunch of kids in a quiverful relationship where the Christians are just trying to have as many kids as possible and homeschooling it, that's the two factors. Does this family homeschool? Wow, he's made some kind of infinite loop. I have to applaud this strategy. Each time an opponent activates a card or effect, inflict 500 damage. If you take damage from an attack involving this card or from a card effect, this card gains attack equal to the damage. So this is getting stronger and stronger, but it doesn't matter because he is killing me. And that's a cool strategy, certainly. But obviously it's not a strategy that would have always worked, because all I would have needed is one counter spell, one Ash Blossom, and that wouldn't have worked. But yeah, anytime they've shown on TV a family that has more than 3 kids, or at least 3, 4, 5, and they're homeschooling, that always ends badly. Frankly, homeschooling as a concept always ends badly. It's just never going to work right, because at the base of it, you have no oversight, no bureaucracy in the thing that needs a little bit of oversight and bureaucracy, or very little oversight and very little bureaucracy. There's a little bit, but also you just don't have the socializing aspects of public or private school. At that way you have inherently a different social dynamic when you have a teacher that isn't your parent and you have students that aren't your siblings, and that is something that is the normal experience for everyone else, and thus you're getting this awkward, abnormal experience if you're homeschooled. And that's why most kids are stereotyped, who were homeschooled, are stereotyped as being a little abnormal and awkward. But yeah, that has nothing to do with video games, so I'm just kind of rambling. I do that more and more. Yeah, my interests definitely have not been heavily around video games lately, in the past year or two, even. YouTube has become more like a job and less like a fun activity, in an attempt to actually try to crawl to 1,000 subscribers and crawl back to monetization. I definitely don't feel like I've been as energetic or healthy as I once was when I started my YouTube channel. So I've been watching a lot more passive Netflix and TV stuff when I really should be playing video games. I'm trying to create something, trying to put my critical eye on something, if you can call that creation or a creative activity. Moving on, let's go through the Gematsu articles. I think we'd already talked about this, but Square Enix Collective is going to publish a fairy tale horror RPG called Little Goody Two Shoes from Pocket Mirror developer Astral Shift. And all they have is this one picture of a girl that looks a lot like Little Red Riding Hood, but there is no Red Hood, so very possibly not Little Red Riding Hood. New Tales, new being part of the title, Tales from the Borderlands, launches October 21st for the PS4 and 5 and the Xbox Series and 1, the Switch and the PC, which, like I said on Wednesday, I don't know if we are quite ready for yet another Tales from the Borderlands or Borderlands property in general. I think I would prefer to kind of just have a cooldown period around that. Right. Guess what we're trying to do is to see what his remaining couple of cards are. Well, that got me nowhere. Let's see. Monkey Barrels is coming to Steam on September 26th. Do we have a general video? Team Nicholas, which was the team that worked on the most recent Binding of Isaac game, I believe. So, a bullet hell top-down twin-stick shooter. Okay. I imagine Binding of Isaac Repentance definitely allowed for a lot of programming know-how to be learned. But Nicholas also might just be publishing this one. Monkey Barrels apparently launched for the Switch in November 7th of 2019, so it's actually an older game. Well, then everything I was saying just now is wrong. In that case, it is already any programming ability that they would have learned from Repentance would have been from Monkey Barrels, which doesn't inherently say Monkey Barrels is bad by any means. It just points out that the two would be connected in the opposite direction. Should have enough now, but if I wanted to be, yeah, I don't have to be that cautious, do I? I can just do this, and if I could only bring out 3 instead of 4, I could have then special summoned again around that. So unless this guy counters something, that's not going to help anything. Don't activate because I don't have anything to destroy. Add another card to my hand. we'll just do everything again. But this time it can only be 3. We'll just banish cards out of his hand. And this is better than going further, so we'll do 3,600 damage and call it a turn. Oh yeah, as far as other things I watched on Netflix, obviously I watched way more than I even remember. The Sandman series released a couple of side stories that that I imagine were released in the comics at about the same period, but didn't have a full connection. Honestly, I think the side stories were released in between a couple of episodes, like the last couple of episodes. So the short story, 2-part short story, Calico and the Dream of a Thousand Cats, probably should have been in a different order, but they moved it around, which is fine. And they released it a week later, which is an interesting new experiment by Netflix to say, actually, let's try and get 2 weeks of hype around the series instead of just focusing in on releasing everything on day one. And interesting, Dream of a Thousand Cats is a rotoscoped it's a rotoscoped kind of animated CGI experience, so it doesn't even look like the other Sandman series, and I could see how that could be fairly off-putting and a little weird to have one episode out of a mini-series on Netflix to be rotoscoped and CGI animated. But yeah, I watched that extra episode. It's not, I don't think, going to be a case where more extra episodes will come about, because they still are staying fairly within the lines of what the comic book releases are. They've made several changes that would have had to have been made just because they don't own the rights to things like John Constantine and like several other DC comic book characters. But otherwise, they didn't change too much. And if anything, they're making a good example of probably how comic books should be converted to live action, in the sense that they're making enough changes to justify going back and rereading the Sandman series, which I might actually do if I had more free time, and then compare and contrast the two different. Also, the Sandman series, much like the Lock and Key comic book series, visually just looks so different that the live action series, even though for Sandman is trying to mostly be visibly the same, the art in the comic book of Sandman is so unique to the couple artists that worked on it, that you just could never put that on screen. If you were going to put it on screen, you would just have to scan the images and then try and trace over those images and turn that into motion. Kind of like a motion comic book does, which I don't think motion comic books ever really went anywhere. But yeah, I definitely am not super interested in the news today. Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed launches October 18th. We talked about that at the end of this stream. It'll be an Epic Game Store exclusive at the beginning. It's a player versus player game. Dead Island 2 listed on Amazon with a February 3rd release date, new box art, and screenshots and descriptions. Just trying to burn through this. Hatsune Miku Project Diva Megamix DLC Song Pack 12 to 18 has been announced. Which reminds me, I do believe I saw some news that there is actually going to be another collaboration for my favorite lewd mobile game, Destiny Child. Which, if that really happens, I think that's a mistake, because I was hoping that they'd just given up on collaborations altogether, because it really didn't work. It would be odd for there to be a collaboration with Destiny Child when that is just admitting that the Project Nikkei is not big enough for a collab, or isn't going to be out of its beta by the time the collab happens. It also means I just need to save up crystals and gems, the premium currency. You do earn crystals, but if a collab happens this time, I need to have probably 100,000 gems just ready to go, just to make sure I get at least one copy of each of those collab characters, and not repeat the mistakes. If they are going to do a new collab, I feel like they should probably find a way to bring back the old collab characters, because those are the gaps in my collection. I have almost every character. No, I have every character in the game available except for the collab characters. And so if I could get one copy of that would be nice for a complete collection. But that's the only thing I'm really concerned about as far as a collab too. So immediately a game announces a collab with another game and limited edition characters, and that stirs up more negative emotions than positive emotions in my mind. Oh yeah. I've been setting up a wireless alarm system / doorbell with my whole a smart home setup through the Tuya, Tuya system, and I was able to confirm this. You can set up a device that's like a alarm system that has a panic button on it and all of that. You can set up that device on the second account and share that device to another account. So theoretically you can put this alarm system in an aging parent's house that lives across the world and connect it to their Wi-Fi, and over the internet, if they hit the panic button or if their alarm goes off, you could get a notification of that and call them and try and figure it out, or go visit them if it's necessary, which is what I was trying to figure out. And this is all done through no real service, no monthly service, no expense other than buying the hardware. It's very iffy, certainly. It took me 3 times to get it to connect to a Wi-Fi. That's not uncommon. This is the second physical device I've had to buy because the first one straight up didn't work. But it's also very cheap. Arguably, there is an idea you could argue for skipping over getting a small starter set, which is what I got, that just had one door sensor, one doorbell, and one key fob, and the siren and the hub to it. Skipping over that and going directly towards a full alarm system that's just got a dozen door window sensors and 3 key fobs and one siren, one motion sensor. That would be more expensive, certainly, but depending on what you are going to end up wanting at the end, um, that might be better and cheaper. That, as long as there's a decent chance that they're mix and matchable, because they're all the accessories and detectors are transmitting over some standard, maybe not the right standard, but some standard wireless 430 megahertz broadcast, and it doesn't seem like there's really any security there, so I imagine you could clone their signals and repeat it and set off an alarm multiple times if you wanted to try to irritate someone into leaving their alarm off. But then if you're targeting, someone's being targeted like that, you would need a wired system that was much more expensive and much more well thought out. This is cheap, let's just do a little bit type setup. This is the kind of thing you'd put in a apartment building, and it doesn't require any screws to install anything or any drills to run wires. Everything is just 3M stripped, taped to the walls. But my thought did work, which inherently lent to me buying another set of the starter kits. I'm going to mix and match that, and I'll still have like 2 door window sensors that I really don't have the greatest of uses for. Like the thing I really would like it to do, and I'll have to think about whether I can get it to do this, is see if I could run a delay. The thing I'd really like is a vibration sensor that would tell me when a washer and dryer stops vibrating. But as is often the case in programming, the easiest way to accomplish this may actually be to cheat it and simply put door open close sensors on the washer and dryers doors, and then run a delay of however the longest amount of time would be on that, and then put up a notification after that. So if the longest the dryer ever runs is an hour and 20 minutes, set it up to always send a notification after an hour and 20 minutes. That doesn't mean it's going to actually know when the dryer is actually done, but it will tell you a notification or remind you after a specific point. And so you're faking it, you're not actually accomplishing it. Whereas the only thing I could do to, I think, actually get it to work the way I'd want it to, I think, would be to try and install a humidity sensor inside the washer and dryer, and then set off the humidity sensor when it goes below a certain humidity, when I guess all the water in the washer was drained, which I'm not sure they really even recognize that, or it would go off when all the humidity is way lower, when all the clothes have been dried. But putting a humidity sensor inside of a dryer in particular sounds like a great way to melt a humidity sensor. Is now the time to activate this? Maybe, maybe not. Let's just do this. Now was definitely not the time to activate that. And obviously I'm not paying attention. I could have probably bought more accessories for the siren if I would buy it directly from China through like Alibaba or something like that, or AliExpress, but I don't want to buy things through Alibaba and AliExpress. I like the pretty good protection of buying things through Amazon and getting free Prime shipping and returns that are easy. One of the devices I got was shipped by Chinese Post, and they allegedly delivered it yesterday, but I definitely haven't seen that package. It may be in my mailbox. Back to video games. Video games. Soul Hackers 2 has an opening movie, according to Gamatsu. Akai Katana Shin for the PS4, Xbox One, and Switch launches December 15th. Is this a visual novel? Nope, it's a shoot 'em up. I like the one image that looks good, but clearly these are just the menu images. And then the actual game is just a colorful bullet hell shoot 'em up game that is too ADHD for my own opinions, for my play style. Embracer Group, we have acquired Bitwave Games, Geotech Limited Run Games, Middle Earth Enterprises, Singtrix, Tetsujin, Tripwire Interactive, and Tuxedo Labs. Here they at least do you the benefit of showing you the logos, some of which I recognize, maybe 2 of them, the rest of them I don't. It is a really big acquisition, or at least it was a slow news day that they pretended like it was a big announcement and acquisition. I think it is a big deal. Inherently, the danger, though, I think, is maybe Sweden just doesn't have any antitrust laws. And if one country just allows for a giant monopoly to grow and exist, that could hurt that country very well. It could hurt the world and the global economy, which I hate to talk in those terms, certainly, but it could hurt consumers quite a bit if all of a sudden half of all video games are sold by Embracer Group, because at some point they can just make the decision to say all of our games are now $70, all of our games are now $80, all of our games are now $120. They could raise the price on everything that Embracer Group sells, and if they've become such a monopoly that they're putting out half the games, that would have a significant impact, certainly. And it really is just too many companies merged already. And the Cold War of acquisitions just continues to go on, with Microsoft acquiring big companies, Embracer Group acquiring a bunch of companies, Sony not acquiring that many companies, but a couple. I'm surprised Nintendo hasn't tried to acquire a bunch of companies, but I don't think Nintendo cares to. Also, I question somewhat whether Nintendo actually has as much money as they claim to. This guy's just not playing good. Maybe he'll time out and I'll get a victory, or we'll get a network disconnect. I do want to go back and adjust my network settings a little bit lower. That's part of the reason why I've been watching so much Netflix is I've been trying to see, am I still getting those slight pauses and slight hitches? And occasionally I am still getting them, but they are considerably slow. It's like pausing for half a second, where previously it was pausing and then buffering for 30-40 seconds. So I think on my QoS I just need to crank it down a little bit more and lower the speeds, the theoretical maximum speeds, in favor of getting closer to an average speed that causes less hiccuping. Also, my Roku TV sometimes likes to just crash and be buggy. The software is not as stable as I'd like it to be. I'm not dropping any network frames here, so if this is a network disconnect issue with Yu-Gi-Oh! At the moment it looks like that's exclusively Yu-Gi-Oh! But since we've got extra time, the Form Life Simulator simulation game Hakano wa Bokujo Hitsuji Mura has been announced for Switch, which my dislike for forming life simulator games is pretty obvious, so I don't think I'd probably want to play this. That being said, this does kind of feel more varied than what you normally see. It kind of feels like an old 80s game instead of a brand new game. It does seem to be more around the idea of actually farming or ranching. It actually looks like it's more ranching and breeding dogs instead of growing crops. And here we have the screenshots once again awkwardly zoomed in the center of the image, which just turns into crotch shots. There's something to that. Interesting. No win, no loss there. Normally when you can't connect to the server, it either gives you a win or it gives you a loss. That time it just said, nope, we're just going to leave it neutral. Which that means if somebody is cheating potentially and messing with the network connections, and they can exit a game that they're about to lose and take no penalty for it, well, there is a potential loophole there. Meanwhile, this would be about the time I'd stop playing and just cover the news, but I'm desperately trying to actually get to rank 20 in this episode, and I don't think I'm going to actually make it. Unless we get a couple of quick disconnects. Not a single frame drop there, so I have to put that on just a lot of people playing Yu-Gi-Oh! At the moment. Let's see, Koei Tecmo has opened the Tokyo Game Show 2022 website. That's probably not news. Really? Like, that seems to be fairly basic. Maybe a little old-fashioned, but Japanese companies are a little old-fashioned anyways. It is somewhat silly to open a website just for an event when really you should probably just have Koei Tecmo or kt.com/TGS and just update that new website instead of making a new one. Can't special summon, can't special summon. Alright, so let's destroy that and see if we can special summon now. Yes, we can. Well, you somewhat messed with my strategy by stopping me the special summon until main phase 2, but I don't think that really changes the strategy too much. It is possible that I'm keeping these cards on the field too long, and I should just try and kill all these cards and get them in the graveyard faster. Because right now I have a possibility where I could potentially special summon the big guy, but I don't really want to do that yet. Okay. Yeah, I could special summon the 3 right now and attack, but I don't think I want to. Moving on, Gemetsu says Elden Ring shipments and digital sales have topped 16.6 million. Which, yeah, Elden Ring's still very popular. I guess that is also another thing I've been distracting with myself with. Obviously, I don't even remember what I've been doing yesterday. Like, I've just run into this point where I'm just totally distracting myself on so many different things. But I've still been working on that learning an Excel sheet, and I'm slowly making progress with it. and just learning what is the incredibly long, nested, convoluted algorithm, formula and function that I need to write to get the Excel sheet to visually look the way I want it to look. It is a little shocking how difficult it is to say just eliminate all the columns that are empty except for a header text at the top, and eliminate all the rows that are empty except for a header cell on the left. Like you would think that there would be something called window shade filter, or a vertical and horizontal lookup, or there would be a query you could do that was fairly simplistic to say, if everything in this row is empty, just don't show it, and collapse the grid down to points where there is actual information. But no, there isn't anything like that. So instead, what I'm having to do is just start on the left, eliminate any columns that start at the left that are empty, and then put the first column that has something in the first column, and then at the second column look to see how many columns were skipped, and then do it all over again plus 1. And so that it's not one long formula. In that case, it's going to be 10 and then another 25, so like 35 different formulas in different cells, which is too much. I'd like to keep it all in one cell and do it all in one place, but that's seemingly going to be too hard or impossible to actually accomplish. Excel programming is not like C++ programming where you can just guarantee one long one-liner, or that there is even a real value in having a one-liner. Like, Excel actually has more value in having one-liners than C++ does, because it's kind of impossible to not have a one-liner in Excel formulas. But it's missing a lot of functions if it was going to be an actual Turing complete programming language, which is not what it's really trying to be anyways. I still maintain my theory that almost 100% of everything done in Excel is done underutilizing Excel, and done very simplistically, to the point where it's maybe not worth it to even be in Excel. You know what, come to think of it, I actually did a job that was using basically Excel, and if they were using Google Sheets and the form submission thing, that job could have been way more optimized. Not that it mattered. They didn't care how long it took. Anyways, it was a temp job that was going to end when the last bit of information had been inputted, so they were more than happy for people to move at a moderately slow pace and just collect a paycheck and be done with it. And like all temp jobs, once you do one temp job, the temp agency will actively blacklist you from trying to position you in anything else for most of the time, so that they don't have to claim you as a full-time employee and give you any kind of health benefits or anything. So it's really not worth it to take temp jobs. Of course, if you're desperate for money, you're desperate for money. Video games, though. Boy, more now than ever before, it really shows how I needed to have created these live streams because I needed an outlet to just ramble out loud, even if nobody's really listening or only 5 people are listening, or nobody's listening and they're just watching me play video games muted. I personally needed to talk about this stuff, and admittedly, particularly around video games and computer programming and nerd stuff, I just don't have anybody in my life that I can meet up face to face and talk over those things. It'd be nice if I did, but I've only found maybe 2 or 3 people in the entirety of my life that were smart enough to even hold a conversation when it comes to programming and well, video games. I could certainly talk to a lot more people about that. But then even in that, a lot of people that wanted to talk about video games back in the day wanted to talk about Halo or their favorite video game over and over again, and that's fairly boring. Like, the video games I play are fairly niche and different. So yeah, if I wanted to talk about The Witness or a puzzle game back when I was in high school, there would have been nobody who would have been interested in that game. Right. I'm gonna toss this because I don't want to run out of cards. Now, I'm either screwed here or I'm about to pull off a trick. There is definitely also a possibility that there are some group of gamers out there that I couldn't hold a conversation with because they just know more about games or than me, or that there's a group of programmers out there that I can hold a conversation with because they are just so deeply entwined into a higher level of programming than I'm familiar with, or they're entwined into a different way in which things are done, or a different language. Like, if anybody claimed anything that ended in the phrase method in programming, I almost certainly wouldn't know what they were talking about. So, yeah. Because I really don't have that experience as far as programming. I could catch up, I think. I would hope that I could catch up fairly quickly. But inherently, I think people could probably BS me too and pretend like they were programmers that knew a lot more if they knew just enough to get through the BS. I could see someone faking it and tricking me into believing that they actually knew something about programming. Well, do I have any other strategy around this? Moving on, back to video games. A side-scrolling gothic action RPG game called Black Witchcraft for PC launches September 8th. It seems like you've got a girl here with a very long, giant Gatling gun, although I would suspect that the player you're actually playing as is over here on the left. And maybe this is a turn-based game. No? Well, it's a very unique art style, and they're showing you that there are several different kinds of monsters here. Actually need to play. Looks like the main character has kind of like a baby doll lingerie outfit. At least at one point. It seems like maybe there's different outfits. Numerous skills and combos. And so it was the girl with the gun. But it does also seem like there's an action sequence to it. To the whole thing. Yeah, I can't do anything here. I don't know why I can't special summon things. Probably because I don't have any more of them. So I should have put that in defense mode. Yeah, Black Witchcraft here. As an action RPG from a couple companies I don't really recognize the name of. It looks slightly appealing. Definitely going in a different style. You are playing as this character. It would be really weird to put out a screenshot where you're playing as this character. I almost have to assume that this is a time freezing, like, finisher move. Apparently this game was initially revealed 8 years ago. I definitely do not remember ever seeing it before. We may have some success here. Seriously, what is stopping me from special summoning now? Well, that's game over for me. I've lost. Something here is preventing special summoning, and I can't tell what. I kind of like the idea in general of a game just going silent and being in development for 8 years and not trying to keep people's attention for 8 years and just releasing when it's actually finished. The only thing I'd slightly complain about, though, is it definitely would have felt a lot better if it had been secretly in development for 8 years and they had just made no announcement at all. Or if they had said, there's a secret project in the works, but we're not going to tell you anything about it until way closer to its release. Now, if anything, it feels like it's been in development for 8 years, and now they're not even bothering to really advertise it, which probably means it was in development hell, and the game is actually pretty bad. That would be my cautious assumption there, is that it actually is going to be a game that actually sucks, and it just is going to look very appealing. Unfortunately, it really is a case that when you have characters, even in Japanese games, tend to be more lewd, with like a baby doll lingerie type outfit, like they were showing, and going in the dark witchcraft type themes. Those tend to be more fetishes designed to catch the less demanding gamer that exists, instead of being artistic choices that are just the coat of paint over an otherwise great game. That being said, Nier Automata is a pretty good game, and it also has the baby doll lingerie type. Maybe not baby doll, but they have lingerie type outfits. But if anything, Nier Automata might very well be an exception to the rule. And certainly, if you have a series like, I think the Fate Stay Night series here, the Melty Blood game here, if you have a series that go long enough and have enough of a fandom, then, and if the series are animated in cartoons and manga to already look a certain way, that certain way is going to transfer over. Although, even in that statement, you have two characters here that are practically, for anime girls, way overdressed. Let me play for a second here. And return. Yeah. When you look at this character, they have these like long arm coverings for both characters. And then, so you're getting an armpit for the small number of people with armpit fetishes amongst the anime fans. I don't think there's really that many. You get maybe a little bit, is that called a clavicle? Like a little bit of skin here, and that's it for a saber. And then you've got just like chest armor. Now, arguably in anime, you can do something you can't do in the real world, which is effectively super glue the shirt around the breast to the point where they might as well be naked anyways, because if you're seeing the curvature of a breast that much, just imagine that skin tone with a nipple and you've seen their body. And same is true with like hip things where the clothes can just be glued on, and you can't really do that in reality. But yeah, even in this case, you definitely are have to play again. Seeing a level of covered upness and modesty that's frankly out of place for anime. Last thing I'd ever want to do is see anime become westernized and censored and kid friendly. There are kid friendly animes out there, but man, if the art form that is known for pushing the boundaries and the edges and being the most violent and the most lewd and most sexual gets watered down, there's just no hope for anything else. You'll Alright, let's activate one of these. Getting rid of this. What does this do? Get rid of that for sure. As I'm watching this video here, and I'm not going to watch all of it, there is notably a lot of just slashing and light effects when they come in contact with each other. It's just really bright and distracting for at least this character. Which I wouldn't be surprised if that is something that other fighting games try to somewhat avoid, so that players can actually see the contact happen or the hitbox contact happen, even if there really isn't a anything there. Alright, well, I could summon this, I could summon another thing, I could summon... This is 16, so arguably it would be better to summon this first. Take this out, put this here, put this here, summon this, trading 2 2s. And then add this to my hand. And then just activate this. Then we'll discard this one and activate that one. And then we'll discard this one because we already dropped one of those. And that should give me more to now activate this effect to get rid of. these. Do summoning this here. Go ahead and activate that effect. And banish this card here. And I think at this point, the trade-off would be, do we want to trade these for 3,000? 28,000 plus another would be 32,000. I don't think that's really worth it. Yeah, so I think it's probably easier just to leave everything as it is and attack. He has only one card, so I would have to assume that this guy really should just surrender. I mean, I guess I could have tried to get rid of this. I could have potentially won here, come to think of it. If I tried to summon, say, well, apparently I could summon this. I still have yet to figure out when is the right time that I can actually summon that. Alright, well, let's just end the turn there. Just leave it with that. Let's see. Gamatsu says A Plague Tale Requiem has a gameplay overview trailer if you want to check that out. A classic Toplan games are coming to PC, including Truxton, Twin Cobra, Outzone, and Zero Wing. Which, is this the image of all your bases now belong to us? The terribly translated thing. Looking at a trailer for like what it would be really, really old, I kind of assume arcade games is kind of silly. But I do think there's just barely enough relevancy to Toplan games that it definitely makes sense for them to be on Steam, and it definitely makes sense to potentially talk about them or spotlight them. Still struggling to get to rank 19 here. Coming only to PC definitely shows that they're just porting them, and it probably won't be that big of a port. Or that good of a port. Let's choose second step. A game called Gimmick Special Edition has been announced for PS4, Xbox One, and Switch and PC. It's a new edition of a 1992 Sunsoft platformer, which new edition I think maybe just euphemism for a new port. This definitely doesn't feel like an actual remaster or remake. Although if you were going to remaster or remake a game that is old like this, you might just improve the graphics a little bit and leave everything else alone. It gets kind of hard to remaster something that old. Okay, he's got all these traps and a 1/1000 thing. So we'll have to see what these traps activate. Famitsu sales have been updated for 8.1 through 8.14, which all 10 spaces except for the 9th space are owned by Nintendo Switch, with Gran Turismo 7 taking the 9th space for the PlayStation 4. None of these games are new, so this is just continued sales of Switch Sports or Xenoblade Chronicles. hardware sales. Still have the Switch OLED doing well. PlayStation 5 doing pretty good too. And then the updated information, they're doing it a little bit differently on Gamatsu than they've done it in the past, where they're just adding, I assume not really changing the original order of anything. I don't know why there is this odd case of a delay between the top 10 and then the top 30, but it seems to happen fairly often. Space 11 through 17 are still owned by Nintendo Switch, 18 being Nobunaga's Ambition for the PS4, and then Space 19 through 30 are still owned by Nintendo Switch. This game, Apathy, Noragami Goken Nana Fugishi, is new at Space 22, and then Grizu Mina de Kokomaka Moradukuri is in the 30th spot as new. Nothing else is new. Those are probably very unknown visual novels. It does feel like there was some kind of correction here, because you have here top 30 for August 8th through 14th. This, what I was talking about, was August 1st through 7th before. So there must have been some kind of correction that happened here, and they're not playing it out. Even the August 8th through 14th, though, it's just the same narrative. Nintendo Switch all the way down to the 25th position, and with Nobunaga's Ambition, and then Gran Turismo 7 for the PS5, and then Nintendo Switch for the 30th position. So you've got 28 out of 30 of all the games coming out for the Nintendo Switch. So Nintendo is raking in money on software sales, assuming they're profiting off software sales, and they're getting a cut for licensing these other games, which I assume they are. This guy's desperately trying to do something. I don't know if the thing he's trying to do is going to succeed. All I need to do is play, though, and find out. The annoying delays. Again, it would be really nice if I could just play, and then if somebody decides to counter my actions, time would just rewind. The whole time rewinding concept could be integrated into a new digital collectible card game fairly easily. This guy's hurting himself to prevent something from happening. Add that. So let's see if this will work. 1, 2, 3, and 4, I suppose. Okay, that canceled that. But I should still attack here. Like, it makes all the sense to just destroy that card. maybe this card was the wrong one, but yeah, it does seem like he's trying to just to create this defensive wall, but he's got no cards, and eventually I'll get past that defensive wall. Meanwhile, he's not reducing my cards, he's not reducing my life. Let's see, them fighting herds for the PS5, PS4, Xbox Series, and One, and Switch launches October 18th. This was the My Little Pony fighting parody game that's honestly a little late to the table, and I think probably trying to meme on bronies now that at this point I don't think there are just that many bronies out there, or much more of a meme around bronies. Meanwhile, I think any My Little Pony cartoons have probably come and gone, and for the target audience of My Little Ponies, which they claim target audience for My Little Pony, and almost certainly the target audience for My Little Pony is little girls. I don't know if little girls want a fighting game specifically around cartoons targeted to them and girly shows. Friendship is Magic in particular, which is the My Little Pony series this is mostly based off of, has stopped airing, and I'm fairly certain it stopped airing. But it also puts out thematically a non-violent attitude, where a violent fighting game doesn't make sense. If you were to take it in a different direction and think about, say, a Barbie fighting game. If there was a Smash Brothers with all the Barbie and Kens and little sisters and all the characters and different types of Barbies out there, would that make sense in a Smash Brothers style? I feel like I could have just summoned that guy and attacked this guy and won. And I don't know. I don't think it would. Well, it might be funny to see a Barbie Smash Brothers game where you have the bunch of plastic Barbies awkwardly moving around fighting each other in different poses. Like, I imagine you would not frame the steps in between, so it would just be like one frame is her legs open, one frame is her legs closed while she walks to the side of the screen. So it's just like open, close, like a stop motion animation would look like. But yeah, I don't think that's the right way to do that. If you were going to do anything, you would make like a mobile game around Barbie, around fashion shows, and it would be about doing mini games to get your clothing and your skills up and your tricks. It would be like a Miss America contest against other competitors to raise a team of Barbie and her friends, showing off their skills and their fashion and hair. I feel like that would probably be a much better idea. Alright, again, we will see if we can pull off anything, and again, I guess the answer is no. So I think I just lost. The game Duelist launches September 1st for the PC and Switch and Xbox One. This is one of those, I believe, Pokemon clone type games, going more 3D. It also has a farming aspect to it. If anything, that might put it slightly closer to a Monster Hunter type game. I'm not sure you even fight the Duelists against each other, though. Like, which honestly, getting away from the dogfighting aspects of a game might be a good idea, because that it has been the problem with Pokemon games, is that they established themselves originally as being animals fighting each other, and have never been able to really get away from that, even in the side games. I swear if I actually win here, I will be shocked. Like, ironically, I might very well win here if I had just put something face down and seen what happens if he attacked it. Alright, well, we're at 2 hours and 47 minutes. We got up to 18. We are a day late as an order to get to rank 20. I'll play more off screen, but I definitely need a break before I play any more. As far as missions are concerned, seems like we've done all of those missions that were added for the second stage, and all the daily missions except for playing in solo mode, which we have 11 days to that. And we have unlocked our 1000th trap card, which gives us a crown. Is it the crown mate? Yeah, it's a crown mate. And so that puts us... I didn't even look. Do we have a duel live that we need to watch? Yes. It puts us back in a better position with gyms, but not really super interested in buying new cards. We've got a decent amount of this, quite a lot of those cards actually. And no secret packs. We can open a couple bonus packs. The numbers are going still higher with these bonus legacy packs instead of lower. So I do really need to open like 30 packs on every stream until we can get that number way lower. And that's just a side effect of the playing so much, is that I'm just ending up with more and more legacy packs. Of course, you can't complain about getting cards, so even if these are older cards that probably aren't very valuable for play, just getting them does make sense. This is the card where the Millennium or sub-Millennium items are shown. In the second anime series of the Yu-Gi-Oh! They talk about it and then they never talk about it again. Hey, there's an ultra rare. As long as we're getting new cards, it's a good deal. Even if we aren't getting new cards, it's a fairly good deal, because there really is just a whole theme around these Dark Scorpion characters. What could potentially happen here is I could create a buffer of cards that are not disenchantable, something that I can turn into crafting points, and then when opening other types of packs of cards, here you have the symbol of friendship, smiley face. I have to assume in the original anime in Japan this was some other symbol than just a smiley face drawing on their hands, but whatever. It was probably some Japanese lettering for the word friendship, if I was to guess. But yeah, you potentially could open all of these and get a buffer of cards, and then when you open Master Duel packs and get duplicates, maybe then those duplicates could be turned into crafting points, because At the moment, you really don't need crafting points. It would be nice to have more crafting points. But yeah, opening all those legacy packs. There's basically no way that one of those cards wouldn't have been extra. Or at least I don't feel like there would have been one that would have been extra. I would like more crafting points though, particularly ultra rare. But I'd really prefer them to just change the system. I guess there's also 10 days left on the Duel Pass if anybody's still working on that. Yeah. If they combined all the crafting points into one currency, that's really what they need to do. Alright, well, let's start burning through news here. The Arcade Crew and Joy Masher have announced a side-scrolling action platformer called Vengeful Guardian Moonrider for the PS5 and 4 and the Switch and PC, notably excluding the Xbox systems. And if you told me this was a game that was made in the 80s or 90s, I would totally believe you. So Moonrider is going to have some trouble convincing me to be interested in it just by those visuals. Illuminati, I guess it's Ink and Illuminati, launches in early access this winter for the Xbox Series and One and PC, which I want to see what this game actually is. Is it a game with a unique art style, or is it a game that actually has a physical live-action hand drawing things with an ink pen? Yeah, it kind of feels like it is maybe a slight variant on something like Darkest Dungeon in that it has multiple tiers as a strategy game that you play on. There might be something to that. This guy is passing gas out through a woodwind behind him. There might be something to that, but then again it might just be nothing. The game Deathverse Let It Die has added a PC version. I thought they had already announced that, but I guess not. The free-to-play survival action game is also available on the PlayStation 4 and 5 and 4. Unless this is the old game. No, this is the new game. There was one that was very similar to Deathverse Let It Die that may have just been called Let It Die or just called Deathverse. But I guess now there will be a PC version. I don't know why you wait, but it is pretty much been admitted at this point that Sony PlayStation is paying for exclusivity in some ways, where they can get exclusive announcements of the game being on the PS4 and PS5 for a couple of weeks. They're also paying for exclusivity in the sense that they're paying for some games to not show up on Xbox Game Pass, which at a certain point I think that's illegal, but they've got big lawyers that I imagine can argue it isn't illegal. I think it's the legal definition, though, of tortious interference to pay somebody or otherwise influence somebody to not do business or not have a contract with someone else. Let's see. A game called The Chant launches November 3rd. A new trailer showcases the dark side of cultism, spiritual melee combat. You have like 3 different variations of this girl. This is the first I recall of a game called The Chant. Let's watch through the blurred video. Well, no, come to think of it, maybe I had seen something around this. I can't remember. I almost feel like there was a Netflix show or something like this too, where somebody ends up on this spiritual retreat / cults island. Yeah, I don't recall these images. I recall the general concept. And almost certainly that has happened in some way, where somebody's gone to some third world country island that has no law or enforcement, and then they've ended up trapped on an island with a cult. Certainly that's the stuff of horror movies for decades. The Wicker Man is effectively around that concept. And the other thing is that this feels like this might be one of those anthology horror games but it doesn't really look like it plays like one of those games, and it's by a different publisher and different developer. Yeah, that definitely feels much more like an adventure game, whereas the Dark Pictures anthology games is what I'm trying to reference. Those are all very much more like Telltale games, whereas mostly dialogue with some quick time events, and that's it. Cult of the Lamb sales have topped 1 million. Cult of the Lamb is the game that I believe has come out and said that they were paid to not be released on Xbox Game Pass. And at a certain point, yeah, maybe it is perfectly legal to say don't be on Xbox Game Pass exclusively, but you might cross the line if you say don't be on Xbox Game Pass at all. Cult of the Lamb seems to, frankly, be selling pretty good. Perhaps there would have been even more sales or more hype around it otherwise. Although, arguably, a game that has cult in the name and even the lamb in the name evokes a lot of religious iconography that might cause a good percentage of people not to play the game. Let's see, a game called the Entropy Center has a 5-minute gameplay walkthrough. This feels a lot like a Portal type game, which I'm more than happy to see some other people other than Valve try to make a Portal type game and put a different spin on it, put a different story on it, since Valve really can't tell any more story. If anything, it seems like the gimmick here is that you're going to get a gun that's not a Portal gun, but a gun that rewinds time. But Portal Reloaded also has a time element to it, so. But for specific items to potentially be able to be rewinded to a time before they were broken might make some sense. It also just obviously has a gravity fling ability. So you can rewind time in this destroyed facility. And I imagine for each item to have a history to it that probably is a very limited history, where you're not going to be able to rewind things more than a few steps back. But yeah, this is a fine idea, certainly. Looking at this, I kind of don't even want to bother to see any more, but just to save time and to not spoil myself. The problem, certainly, with these ideas or games like this is it's just how much budget and how much time you can really put into something like that. How much voice acting and writing can you put into it? If you do too little, then it's going to feel like an independent game or a single A game. If you do too much, it's going to feel like Portal, which is maybe too long and too complicated and too expensive for that category of game. Regardless, it will always be kind of niche and out there. And so a lot of players won't want to play it anyways. The Eternal Cylinder is coming to the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and Steam on October 30th. alongside an anniversary update. Free upgrade for existing owners. I don't recognize this game either. It looks weird, and my penchant for liking to see weird things almost certainly would have had me looking towards something like this. Some very weird looking monsters. I don't know if it's really a survival game or what. It kind of feels like it's a survival slash fighting game. Does this have a link to the Steam? Let's see. Click on that and yeah, planned release October 30th. So if there's an anniversary update, it's probably an anniversary update to a Epic Store exclusive would be my guess. And so I'm going to kind of break my rule and put this on the following list. Now, story-rich open-world exploration game is what they're tagging it as. Just because that's so weird that I could see missing it and it not being talked about. A cute and creepy adventure game called Beacon Pines launches September 22nd on the Xbox One, Switch, and PC. It's also available on Xbox Game Pass. Seems like you're playing as animals. Let's check out this trailer. Animals, visual novel pop up for dialogue. And then kind of RPG adventure game it looks like. Definitely not seeing a lot of gameplay here, so I'd have to double check as to figure out how this story goes, because it feels like it is a branching path visual novel, really rewinding the past events using charms and discovering different story paths. Does make it feel like it is a new attempt, a new twist on visual novel, branching path visual novels. Slime Rancher 2 launches in early access on September 22nd, which, okay. High on Life has been delayed to December 13th, no longer coming out October 25th. High on Life apparently is a game with a bug with a robotic arm. That's all I can recall about it. Yeah. At a certain point, why even bother announcing your game if you can't get it on the release date and you can't advertise it enough that anybody, that I can remember it, and I guess I'm holding it very specifically to my own personal standard of memorability, but a lot of these games, first I've ever heard of them, perhaps that's because I'm looking at so many games, but a lot of these games, first time I ever hear about them is when they come out or when they're delayed. And I'm trying very hard to get as much information as possible, as early as possible, and it's still not working. A game called Euphoria, U-F-O-U-R-I-A. The Saga is coming to the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC in 2023. I assume this is a pun, but also this looks like an old NES game, so visually I'm not very interested. Sunsoft has teased multiple titles in development, including a remake, which that really isn't much of an announcement. Aniplex and Works have teased a new RPG project for iOS and Android, which, yeah. I imagine this is, particularly at Tokyo Game Show, going to be the point where we start to see a lot of Genshin Impact clones, with Genshin Impact effectively being a clone of Breath of the Wild, except for mobile. Yeah, you have 3 or 4 images here. I would say 3 images of 3 different games. this being one image. And they all look incredibly similar because they're all trying to push the same idea. Big open world, magical, interesting thing in the distance that you're going forward towards. Characters that look kind of cool from the back, although this one is particularly boring. Big skylines, big skyboxes, and the main thing here is big with a goal. Big with a goal. That's probably the note they gave to each of these developers to make a concept art image. This one seems to have more industry, more robotics. This one seems to have half cowboy universe with trains and half samurai universe with basically nothing. And so I wouldn't be surprised if you jump between one reality and another. And this one has a upside down world with fairly modern houses and a giant castle and flying things. And then on the upside down side here, this might be like modern time Japan in the forest. You're not really seeing a lot here, maybe some flags or towers way in the back. So this possibly is an isekai game where you go to a different world that's more fantasy built, where I don't know if these are going to actually be isekai games, and this one definitely doesn't seem like it's an isekai game. Far too close to each other though to announce 3 games that look so similar. But I think that is the future, certainly, is that a lot of Japanese game companies are going to start to just try and make Genshin Impact type games for mobile, and that they're just giving up on the PlayStation and the Nintendo Switch in general. I don't know if the Nintendo Switch really offers that much compared to playing on a cell phone, as far as hardware or screen space. Moving on, Kimatsu says Legends of Mana, the Teardrop Crystal, begins airing on October 7th. I assume this is a anime series. There's the commercial, which we shouldn't really show. Yep. This definitely feels like it's an anime series based on a kind of long-running older game series, so it kind of has that long-running older 90s anime style to it, which we may just be seeing more of a resurgence to that anime style anyways, and the moe style may finally be dead after nearly a decade of being more popular. Alright, so now we need to just burn through games that came out on Steam. Alright, immediately we have an adult game. I need to turn that off this weekend. There's no more reason. I'm not learning enough here. It does seem like there is just, for every one more anime style, Eastern style adult game put in the adult section on Steam, there's like 3 or 4 Western CGI 3D model style anime games. This one, Fresh Woman Season 3, is a whole bunch of 3D models of women, and once again, just immediately pornographic images in the screenshots. It's rated very positively, Fresh Woman is, so that one thing I guess I am learning from this is that some of these adult content Western games actually are good, which is not usually the case. Usually they are awful. But yeah, we have just hit a complete drought as far as Eastern games in general, Japanese games. There's just none coming out, whether they're adult games or otherwise. We're not even seeing Eastern visual novels. So what I have to say is that I'm just going to have to put everything on the back burner and pause and say, I'm going to have to admit to myself that I think my theory is probably wrong completely as far as Eastern adult games being released every other week, at least at this point. That may have been the case near January, but it just doesn't feel like that's the case because there's just Eastern games are not coming out at all. And so I can't gain any more information. And so from that, I will just need to back burner it and say, let's just filter out all the adult games. And until we start to see Gamatsu potentially announcing more adult games, or I see some of my other sources announcing adult games in enough of a number that I can start to see, are these games coming to Steam at all, or are they coming in censored forms? Do they have uncensored patches on as DLC or on the third-party websites, or are they actually being released uncensored on the adult side? But the sample size now is just too small. Plus, I'm still risking just a YouTube guideline strike every time there's a potential shot here. Like this kawaii, which means cute, hentai, which means perverted, girls 3 here, just has images of like anime characters that look like they are fan images. It's just a collection of not particularly even that well drawn anime characters that are flat. Part of it is the background. Yeah. Ideally, you don't want just an image you got off the internet that has been cropped and is a background. You want it to have a background all throughout the game and to feel like you're actually immersed into that world. So this game in particular seems like these images were probably just taken from the internet, possibly cropped a little bit, and then thrown in the game with no real effort. Here we have another parkour game. Yeah, at this point we're seeing more of these parkour games than we are Eastern visual novels of any sense. But, so things may just have changed also. Here we have a Japanese only shoot 'em up, I think. Nope, it says it supports English. But it also is coming soon. Inherently, we also are trying to find good games, or good games to put on the YouTube Shorts, which I almost have to assume that I haven't scheduled any YouTube Shorts for tomorrow. Here we got one, The Witch of Inahashi. This is not English supporting, Japanese only. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a mature content patch on this game, but I also wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't. Seems to be more around a drunk mother. It's interesting that they would put a disclaimer here. This game does not support English. Following is the Japanese description. Almost as if that was something that Valve and Steam did by default, and I don't think it does that. But they probably do generate different pages in different languages automatically, even if you're not selling the game in that language. Like, it is very possible that there is a steam.storepowered.uk, well, not UK, but .jp for Japan, where everything is in Japanese. I don't even know if .jp is the Japanese domain. I'll give this a follow and put a YouTube short around this. There might be something there. Interestingly enough, the video YouTube short that got 500 views today was of a darker game, so I almost wonder if having darker YouTube shorts works or if it is just kind of random. I kind of feel like it's just kind of random. But whatever. Getting 500 views on a YouTube short in 9 hours is way better than any of my live streams, which frankly get about 5 views in 24 hours. So there's no real success happening there. If I was just trying to be successful, I would not live stream. Here we have a live action first date, late to date, which I will put that on the follow list and give that a YouTube short. Full motion video games are always intriguing to me. Perphony, I think not. Berserk Soccer, I think no. Rydo. Inevitably, with the adult games also unlocked, I'm going to just, my eyes will glaze over and I will look at a game and just start clicking forward and looking at more screenshots without realizing it is an adult game until a few seconds have passed. Because I am trying to move incredibly fast here. This is coming soon, so I'll wait till it actually comes out. Night Flight is no. Microbes and Machines is no. Happy Clocks has Dark Screenshot Syndrome. Yeah, ever since I stopped really trying to even say anything about games, burning through them has been a lot easier. Yeah, I'll give this a follow and spotlight it. And I'll spotlight this one too, Crustacean Nation. But yeah, I was definitely slowing myself down quite a bit by reading out the title, scrolling down to see the price, scrolling down to see if it supported English language games, trying to say something interesting about the games, which usually boiled down to this game looks awful, this game looks like garbage, this is an asset flip, this is has Dark Screenshot Syndrome. Horror themed rage game, just press and hold the buttons that pop up on the monitors. I think I'll say no to that. Alright, this one's coming soon. Soul Light here is a probably Western visual novel, tempting in anime style. Far too many artists claim an anime or manga style when they really aren't doing anything close to that. You know what? I'm gonna experiment and make a YouTube short around this one and see how many views something like that gets. Quaver here looks like a mobile phone port. But yeah, I bought this set of tarot cards that I've been waiting probably over a decade to buy. And the amount of money they cost was only like $30, but $30 in the 10 years ago may have been a little bit more than I was willing to spend, and frankly it could have been a lot more because of just the devaluation of the pound since it is from the UK. But I finally said I need to either poop or get off the pot is the saying, and I said, well, let's just pull the trigger on this and buy it. And it claims to be manga tarot cards, but it's made by a French artist, and the art style really isn't manga inspired. It isn't really inspired to look anything like manga would have even looked 10-15 years ago when the artist actually created the whole set. And I was following them on DeviantArt, and that's where I saw the set. there's a lot of variations on the challenge of making a tarot card set. It's like 78 cards that you'd have to animate, that are sold on that site for different variations instead of just a traditional classic way they look, which makes it interesting artistically to see several different artists paint or draw the exact same images or the same themes multiple different ways. It really feels like an art school project, but it really isn't manga style. It's much closer to a French high fashion art style from a French artist, which is fine. It looks fine. It's just the naming and the labeling is wrong. Of course, the problem now is, now that I have the set, I want to display the set, and that's going to potentially be a nightmare art project for me that I'll do in a year or two as I think about it, to try and either put it on some really big picture frames on the wall, or possibly I'm going to try and put it as a lamp with picture frames in a square orientation, because I need 4 picture frames to hold all the cards and show off all the cards. Yep, we burned through all the games there fairly quickly. Shin-Chan Mini and the Professor on summer vacation. The Endless 7-Day Journey launches for PC on August 31st. See, this is an issue too, is like Shin-Chan here, as a anime for kids, although they actually parents don't like their kids watching Shin-Chan, I believe, because he's kind of rude. Most notably, he shows off his genitals and makes it look like an elephant as a gag, and that's probably a gag that made more sense 10 or 20 years ago, 30 years possibly, when Shin-Chan originally started airing. Now not so much, but this art style is unique kind of to Shin-Chan. This is almost like squiggly vision, which some of those Comedy Central animations from decades previous had, or it's just not good animation, and yet it still, as a show, has decent enough writing and audience to keep people's attention. So instead of me saying the moe art style, though, what I probably need to do is just try to find a collage or build a collage of very recognizable characters from anime shows and other shows, as far as animation styles. So if I had like a Family Guy art style, if that was used a lot, or a South Park art style, and if I could just have a collage to say, yeah, it's closer to this art style than this, that would work. And for Westerners, South Park, Family Guy, people kind of know what that looks like. So it probably is more beneficial to say, all right, this is what Sailor Moon looked like, and that this is the art style of those characters, versus this is what the original Berserk anime looked like, and what that show looks like. Ironically, if you were to try and use like Tenchi Muyo, you would have a consistent art style, but a whole bunch of different types of characters. But that is something in the back of my mind that I'm thinking about, is that I probably at the bottom of the screen just need a collection of different characters to point out, I'm talking about this art style, or this game looks like this. And cultural touchstones, I don't know if games have had that diverse of an art style for it to really make sense. Like for video games, 8-bit pixel art style makes sense. 16-bit pixel style for Super Mario World makes sense. But then Super Mario 64 3D art style, PlayStation 1 art style works, but once you get past Mario 64 with the low polygons, then you kind of have fairly high polygons, which is just the modern art style for Mario. So it goes from like 8-bit, 16-bit, low polygon 3D, modern. over the course of 4 decades, and there's a lot more variety and other kinds of art styles. But that is something that's still on the back of my mind and is definitely a project for another day. I'll probably never get around to it, frankly. Definitely this Amazon Prime Day. Everything I got this Prime Day worked out a little too well, and then I just didn't end up with a lot of extra projects to last me through the next year, which sucks because I would have liked to keep myself a little bit more busy. Of course, I've got plenty of video games to play, and that's what I should be doing. GameDeveloper.com articles, then quickly. Let's go through them. A new study shows developers are not sold on NFTs. Good. We've actually succeeded fairly well to stop hearing about people announcing NFTs or asking about NFTs. So I'm fairly certain NFTs are dead. Activision has failed to shut down a California Civil Rights Department lawsuit. The update here is Activision Blizzard is rebuffing the federal judge's decision not to shut down the state of California's lawsuit against the company for allegations of sexual harassment and discrimination. Which, at a certain point, maybe you don't put out a rebuffing of a judge ever, and you definitely don't do it when the sub-headline is going to repeat the phrase allegations of sexual harassment and discrimination about you, because this really is more of a Streisand effect than I think than anything. They had tried to get it shut down because some legal representative at the Equal Employment Opportunity Center became part of the publisher's legal strategy, which seems like really, in that case, Activision Blizzard was in the wrong to not vet their new employees. But yeah. There's a comment somewhere in this. But the updated part is not highlighted, which is bad journalism on Game Developer. The judgment from the judge apparently is far from promoting public interest. Any attempt to disqualify plaintiff strongly conflicts with public policy, which is a very dry, straightforward this is very dry response from a judge, which is what you really expect. Sorry, had a brain fart there. Yeah, again, I cannot find the quote. You'd think it would be between quotation marks and fairly easy to find, and it would be bold, but I don't want to read this entire article. So I'll say, if you can find the quote that's been updated here to see the actual words they used to rebuff a federal judge's decision, which is never a smart idea. Again, never argue with a judge. Never ever argue with a judge. Nobody is above a judge, really, except for maybe a higher court's judge. The Roommate Group creates a new mobile development brand called Solid Bash. And then here are some of the game concepts out of loop pitched before making Thirsty Suitors, which, if they are tossing out game concepts, then the general idea of these games ever being made is zero, because you would not give out ideas that you might come back to. And so these must have been pretty awful ideas, relatively speaking. This almost feels like a Stargate with all these symbols. Falcon Age Adventures. I mean, the name sounds intriguing. A retired thief sounds incredibly boring, because any kind of retired thief would either have to be either he stole enough to be rich, or he got too old and was getting caught or got caught. A retired thief with a monkey companion. And that, I guess, is the two of them. I can see something called Falcon Age Adventures working. Retired thief being dragged back into life of being a thief maybe makes some sense. Or you just tell a interesting story around these characters and make kind of a telltale game or a visual novel around it. This was supposed to be a first-person action adventure set in an alternate sci-fi Marrakesh. They hired to reclaim cultural artifacts taken to the museum during the Long Wars. The monkey they communicate with by hand signals, expanding on lessons learned from Falcon Age, branching skills tree of the monkey's abilities. So Falcon Age itself was supposed to be first game. The thing here, though, I would say is I imagine a rough concept like this, which is all of this. The only thing I'd probably be upset about is that some artist bothered to draw these characters, wasting an artist's time drawing something that this probably went no further than a single pitch meeting. I guess same is probably true here, as you've got an artist drawing an entire scene for what should have just been a rough pencil sketch at best, if you're going to do any art at all. But yeah, first pitch meeting concept like this concept could certainly go somewhere eventually. I think you would probably get rid of the retired part immediately, and then arguably maybe you get rid of the thief part immediately, and it's just monkey thief, and you're playing as a monkey directly instead of controlling a monkey. Why have that obfuscation from the controls? And then you have a different type of story potentially. Moving on, the Kickstarter game Untamed Isles goes on hiatus after a crypto crash, which, oops, I guess that means they literally put all the money that they got from Kickstarter into cryptocurrency. Or the game was designed around the idea of cryptocurrency, and now that cryptocurrency has crashed down, I mean, arguably now may not be the worst time to try to get back into something solid like Ethereum or Bitcoin if it's crashed fairly low. But I still don't know if I'd really suggest that. The cryptocurrency made a lot more sense before it started being regulated and monitored, and was just when it was really just being used to buy drugs and illegal services and goods. The value in cryptocurrency was the fact that it was a black market selling illegal things you couldn't buy elsewhere. Once it just becomes something you can use at Walmart and starts being regulated by the government, then you might as well just be using cash. Something that's more backed by bonds by the US government or something like that. Moving on, Hero Capital and One Up Ventures have invested $3.4 million in the developer Atom Switch, ATOM. The Disgaea series creator Sohei Nikawa has departed Nippon Ichi Software, which maybe that's a bad statement for NIS, but also the Disgaea series was the game I never really could get into. I kind of like the art style for Disgaea, but the slow positional placement RPG gameplay is just slow. They've made a lot of Disgaea games, but Disgaea 6 has shipped really only 5 million copies as of 2021 because it's such a niche game. there definitely is a question whether NIS is going to change for the better or the worse, but I think NIS is probably going to change. You can definitely see that this guy is, if this is a relatively recent picture, he's relatively way too young to be leaving a company. Like, usually in Japan, you'd stay there until you're at least 50 or 60, if not your whole life. So that also implies that there's some amount of change happening, that, and change is always scary, for lack of a better term, a better way to explain it. Interesting, Sony's Bend, that Sony owns the company Bend, and Bend owns the rights to the game Days Gone, but arguably the person who made Days Gone, I don't think works for Sony or Bend anymore. So their game that didn't sell very well, and the creator of Days Gone said Sony didn't really support enough of, is going to be adapted into a feature film, or at least the options have been bought. I'd assume that the options have just been bought. But maybe it's been greenlit to actually make it to production or pre-production. Now, what does that really mean? It was a game where you're a biker and there's just the zombie hordes attacking you, and the zombie hordes were really big, and that was the main sales pitch for video games. But the zombie hordes being very big in a movie isn't much of a sales pitch, because you can do that with CGI fairly easily, or you could just do it with real people. Although in a COVID world, which is still around, perhaps you can't get hundreds of extras all looking like zombies chasing after somebody, or you just wouldn't. Yeah, that was interesting too, was that the BBC show Top Gear has its most recent seasons on Netflix now, and it's like the 4 most recent seasons, which is none of the interesting people who hosted Top Gear before, but the James May and the other 2, I can't remember their names. They're all doing their own things on Amazon Prime. Every now and then they have their own side shows, and sometimes they've previously done a Top Gear competitor show, but I don't know if they have a recent season that they're recording or doing anything with. But yeah, back to this game being turned into a movie. That, I don't know if there's really a great reason to do that, other than maybe they just wanted the name Days Gone and the general concept to make a zombie movie around, and it will be very, yeah, you'd almost assume that it's going to be very unconnected to the actual game, and nobody's going to really recognize that because nobody played the actual game. And yeah, it's probably more of a gimmick just to make a zombie movie and say it's based on a video game, than to make a zombie movie in general and say it's based on nothing. Alright, well, let's do some flawless cleanup here. We have a game called The Trials, which I just don't think has enough relevancy. Does this require VR? No. I guess what I'll do is I just make an exception here. Like, it's 100% positive or 79% positive on the Steam DB rating. I never figured out why that was different. It has like 13 reviews. It kind of looks like a low tier puzzle game, but I'm gonna just put it on the wish list and make an exception here, when really I should just say the game is not relevant enough to really buy and take it off the fault list. The Tourist here, let's see, 86% positive with 29 reviews. And again, I'll just make a exception here and put this on the wish list because it's close enough to 30 reviews. Although this visually would be a game that I think I'd be kind of hard to pick to actually play. Tides of Time from 2020. I can easily say no to that one. Remove that from the fall list. Thrill of the Fight Virtual VR is a VR game, so it stays on the fall list until I decide I'm never going to buy a VR game. Third Day here, being a point-and-click adventure game where you play as Jesus, or the Jesus as depicted by Family Guy, kind of. Biblical science fiction adventure game. You got Jesus search for the truth of a story full of humor and satire. The funny thing here is there's no respectful way to like play a game around Easter or Christmas and have anything to do with Christianity, because there just aren't any good respectful Christian games out there. People who are obsessed with Christianity, frankly, are not obsessed enough with programming to make video games that are good, or not obsessed enough with other cultures or video game culture to understand how to make a good game. So, if I was going to get this and play this, I have to get it and play it just as a parody and as a joke, which it clearly says it is. And I don't know if I really would, but I am gonna just say yes to putting it on the wish list. Basically, I'm putting it on the wish list to see if people want to see me play this game. If someone gifted me this game, I would play it. It would work very well in the same way that like Binding of Isaac Repentance has religious themes but isn't really particularly respectful to Christianity. And I'll leave it up to anybody, it's individual opinion, whether games or anybody should be respectful to Christianity or any religion. But yeah, I'll put this on the wish list if somebody wanted to gift it to me. Yes, otherwise I probably would never pull the trigger on this, because there's just less controversial games that could be played. Meanwhile, like this horror game, which is mixed, so I'll say no to it. Like, just a random horror game would create less controversy than playing a point-and-click adventure game as Jesus. In fact, even playing a random adult game would potentially create less controversy than playing a point-and-click adventure game parody starring Jesus. The tenants. I don't think I want to play this type of game. You become a landlord and deal with problematic tenants. Sure, you can have problematic tenants, but I would say there's percentage-wise way more problematic landlords than there are tenants out there. There was a Reddit post just yesterday about somebody complaining to their landlord that there was a leak in the roof or a hole in the shower, and his response is, well, you should just move out, which is not an appropriate response. It was like, it wasn't even you should just move out, you should move out and I'm very angry. It was like the landlord saying that. It's like, nope, you're supposed to be the businessman here, you're supposed to be the professional one here, you can't just try to be a slumlord. Although frankly that's how Trump ran all of his hotels and buildings, is that they tried to run out and never repair anything. And that's how his father also ran buildings that had rent-controlled people in them. Let's see. The Tale of Bistoon. Now, it does definitely feel like my standards have been lowered fairly low as far as putting things on the wish list, whereas the actual number of games I bought has been, I think, close to 0 this year. So that there is a odd imbalance here. Apparently this game is inspired by a famous Persian tragic romance named Khosrow and Shirin. I guess for that reason alone, I think I want to say yes to this. It's also rated very positively. It is single player, right? So we'll add that to the wish list. So yeah, it would be much more interesting to play something like the Tale of Bistune than it would be to just try to actively antagonize Christians by playing a point-and-click adventure game. Here we have an adult game called The Swordbearer Season 1. I don't know why there is a specific desire here to have seasons, but I am seeing more of that in these Western adult games. I don't know why that game in particular here was on the fall list. But yeah, these Western 3D model adult games, which in my mind, if it's a 3D model, it's a Western game. Even if it was made by a Japanese person, I'm still gonna say that if it's using the 3D models style, that's a Western game. And maybe that's an unfair division, but that's how I would think. Certainly. In the same way that if you showed me, say, G.I. Joes and then tried to tell me it was Japanese anime, I would laugh in your face and go, no, it isn't. I don't care, even if it was animated potentially by Japanese people, a G.I. Joe show is not anime. It's not targeting United States Japanese people. We have another point and click, and I'm a sucker for point and click, so we'll put that on the wish list, the Sundew. And then we should wrap up this weekend here by just scrolling down my Twitter feed and seeing if there's any new news. Mist Online Uru Live is doing a special event at the moment where you can get t-shirts to wear in-game to celebrate the most recent Mysterium, which is kind of the Mist BlizzCon equivalent, or it's a Mist convention. It's surprising that they're still adding any content to Mist Online Uru Live, and honestly, the way the game looks now is way better than the single player version on Steam of Uru. But it's, I think for the most part, still the exact same game, except for it's played the way they intended it to be played, with multiple players in an MMO. But I don't know if there's really a ton you can do in it after you've done the main puzzles and that you can do in the single player stuff. I don't know if they've been constantly adding content. If they have been constantly adding content, it's shocking that they wouldn't then make a single player version of that content and bring it back onto Steam as an updated Uru 2. OpenCritic says Saints Row reviews are expected Monday morning, so people who have had pre-access to it, I imagine, are going to start to give us some reviews on it. But the problem with that, in particular for Saints Row, the Saints Row reboot, is anti-SJW people are going to say that the mainstream video game journalists are SJWs and that they're going to overly review the game positively because of that, if it's reviewed positively. And if if it is reviewed negatively, then anti-SJWs are going to say, look, the game is so awful, even the SJWs who are mainstream video game journalists, which I kind of do agree that most mainstream video game journalists are SJWs. Yeah. So that there's just going to be this jaded perspective that comes out, particularly around that game, because it's already established itself as the battleground of like identity politics, and it's already established itself as not being a game that can ever be objectively reviewed by anybody. So like inherently I want the game to be good, and I want the game to be reviewed well if it is good. So I am leaning towards hoping the game is good, hoping everything works out. I haven't seen a lot that makes me believe it would be good, but that's that. I mean, we'll see on Monday, I suppose. This is interesting. American McGee says that one of his companies, Mysterious, is moving into an even bigger warehouse space in Shanghai, over 1,000 square meters, which I can't help but assume that's the company that makes all of the plushies, and isn't Spicy Horse Studio, the company that that would potentially maybe work on American McGee's Alice or the Wizard of Oz game. Here is Cyan saying, in Mist Online Uru Live, A, for, I don't know what the A stands for there. For a limited time, all Mysterium t-shirts are available for your avatar. In the new Messengers pub, click on the t-shirts on the table where you link in. Act now. They're only available until September 15th. I don't even know what the new Messengers pub is, but you can see the 3D models of characters do look slightly better, but I think they are still pretty much just going through the same environment that you would experience in Uru, the single player Uru on Steam. I don't think they've added new ages or worlds, and that's what that game really would have needed to do, is that there would have needed to be every 6 weeks a new age, a new world created and released, even if it was mostly empty. And that's where something like Minecraft succeeded many decades later, is that it was just very easy to randomly generate new lands and new places, new environments, create an underlying system that creates different biomes and spawns different types of creatures, instead of trying to make a handcrafted world that has handcrafted puzzles. New Pokemon Shield and Sword Lost Origin build and battle box is available as far as Pokemon trading card game, which I guess that's not really video game related. And then Koei Tecmo was trying to get people to retweet, so they brought out the big guns, as it were, or more arguably the big buns, because this character was notably known for having a big butt that you saw. But it's been a while since we've seen this Atelier Ryza game character, because it's been at least one, if not 2 or 3 Atelier games have been released since then. They were putting them out fairly quickly, and they've, I guess, maybe slightly slowed down. It would be interesting, I suppose, as far as movies being made after video games. We might start to see actors who actually play video games. I imagine they somewhat do have some free time to play video games, and then all of a sudden wanting to be in the movie based on the video game, and getting a movie greenlit because of that. Yeah, that is maybe the way things are going potentially go in the future. I could also see actors having kids and the kids playing video games, and then more more video game movies getting made because of that reason. Otherwise, I don't think there's any more news, which definitely makes some sense considering how we still started pretty late, and that, unless I actively just try to set an alarm clock, which has never worked in the past with me, I don't expect that I'll start waking up earlier again for a while. Although, you know, summer is coming to an end eventually, and so I could see the shifting of the seasons affecting my insomnia. Alright, though that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wish list. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.